even 10%. By 1944, only my father and I were alive, and we were in Krakow concentration camp in Płaszów. There was a selection in May of 1944. And I stood there, my father stood next to me, and Moshe Heller, if you have known him, from Krasno, who was a relative of ours, we used to call him Moshe Polane, because he was from Polane, near Gorlice. So he stood there. His wife was shot with her 2 little babies when the ghetto was liquidated on December 4th, right in front of me. I stood only a few yards away. So he was there, my father and myself. Well, it was what we call the naked parade. That's what the prisoners refer to it, where you undress naked and went by the SS physician who decided who was to live and who was to die. And unfortunately, my father and Moshe Polane were going to be sent to Auschwitz to be exterminated, and I was to stay in Krakow. My father turned to me. He had this piece of bread in his pocket, and he says, "You take it. I won't need it. I know where I'm going. I lost my family. You are the only one that is alive. Do me one favor. I have only one request, and that is be a mensch." And what does a mensch mean? I think every Jewish family knows that if a parent tells the kid, be a mensch, that means don't just be human, because we're all human beings. Be a special human being. Be charitable, be kind, be non-discriminating, and so on and so on. And that's what I try to be, and I think that all us survivors tried that. Be a mensch. So I named it Holocaust Memoirs, Be a Mensch, a Father's Legacy. Now, there is the entire story. I don't have enough time. I think my time is almost up, right?
Keep on going.
Okay. Okay, well, anyway. Now what happened afterwards? My father was taken away. My Moshe Polane was taken away. Within a week, I knew that they died in Auschwitz. How? The 2 Trencher brothers, you may remember them. They were in the business, furniture business and lumber. Were in Auschwitz, and they were in Birkenau loading lumber. They sent a note squished between lumber that was shipped from Auschwitz to Krakow, Płaszów, and a man comes and he's looking for Alexander Bialowlas. And he finds me, and he gives me the note, telling me that my father and Moshe Polane were marched into the gas chambers, and they saw it. Both of those Trencher brothers survived the war, and I saw them in New York. So that happened in 1944. Thereafter, I was now alone. No one in my family was alive. I was assigned, I used to be in the painter and glazier camp, shop, working there. I was taken out of there and assigned that, if you have seen the movie Schindler's List, to open the mass graves that were there and burn the corpses. And there I was assigned, and the most unpleasant assignment I have ever been through. There I was in that mass grave, and as I was bending down with the shovel to lift up a corpse, and I still see that corpse whenever I see a redhead, because it was a redhead, that corpse, and a baby next to him. And to me, he was like a live person. I didn't want to injure that corpse, so I was bending over trying to lift them out, where all of a sudden, I see all the stars in my eyes. I'm bleeding from my nose. A German couple, a criminal who was sent, who had been in Krakow, Prussia from Auschwitz, sent there, saw me bending down and he didn't like the way I worked, so he kicked me with his boots, and his boots were loaded with decomposed matter from the corpses, because he trotted on these corpses, and I had it in my mouth, in my eyes, all over, in my nose. It was a most horrible experience. Fortunately, I was taken out of there the following day, and within a week's time, I was assigned to be transferred to Mr. Schindler's camp. Now, I'm sure you probably all heard about this Mr. Schindler. It depends who you talk to. To some of them, he was God himself, the Messiah himself. To others, he wasn't necessarily the Messiah. Now, what was it to me? I had not worked in his factory in Krakow, but I heard about him, and there were two girls from Krasno. One from, she was actually from Krakow, but she used to come to the Rubens. The Rubens who had flour, if you may remember, they used to come there in the summer. Her name was Sonia Grajover. She was from Krakow. And there was another lady whose father I knew because he was a Belzer Chassid and used to come around to collect money for the Belzer rabbi. And he knew my father. The daughter of this gentleman was also working for Schindler in Krakow. So they were brought from his factory to the camp in order to be transferred to his factory in Sudetenland, which is the western part of Czechoslovakia, which was then Germany and is now part of the Czech Republic. I was assigned to that, and I went there. And I was there until liberation, May 8th, 1945. Now, I am liberated May 8th, 1945, and what am I going to do now? No family, no money, only a striped outfit. But my father's legacy to be a mensch was always with me. That included not only 10 commandments to be a mensch, but to be a mensch included what I tell kids nowadays: don't vandalize schools, don't vandalize school buses, don't join fringe organizations like skinheads and other neo-Nazis and other radicals and so on. To be a mensch includes everything. To me, it is a universal message. To be a mensch means you do only the proper and the nice things. And I thought, I have to do something and make something out of myself. It's a very long story for me to go on and tell you how I eventually landed up in Munich, how I started studying, how I graduated ahead of time, 2 semesters ahead of time, by special permission from the ministry, and they allowed me to take the exams. And I came to Chicago, first to New York, actually to Boston, from Boston to New York, and eventually ended up in Chicago, where I met my wife and married her, and we have 3 children now. And I think that I have tried as best as I could to fulfill the legacy of my father, to be a mensch. So there are 3 messages, I think, that come out from my experience. If you will have here 2 survivors speak to you, or 10 survivors, you will find that we all lost our families, or nearly our entire families. But each individual story is completely different. Sal's is different. Anyone that's going to speak to you is different. Mine, aside from losing the family, is relatively benign. Why? Because we were in the glazing and glass beveling business, and the Germans needed us.